Joining me now to discuss is Mike Davis of the Article 3 Project. Mike, thank you for joining me. I'm glad you're with us because this sounds like legal gymnastics, of course, like they're trying to manipulate laws so that it sticks because they weren't happy with the Supreme Court's ruling that President Trump has immunity here. So explain to our audience what's going on right now and what is Jack Smith really trying to do in all of this?
This is a desperate last-ditch move by Biden and Kamala and Merrick Garland and their henchman, Jack Smith, to try to interfere in this presidential election. Kamala Harris didn't get that post-convention bounce that she expected. Trump stole it from her with RFK Jr.'s endorsement and then Tulsi Gabbard's endorsement. And so you're seeing them ramp up their lawfare again. They've tried to bankrupt Trump. They've tried to throw him in prison for life. They've tried to take him off the ballot. When the Supreme Court stepped in and stopped him, now they're trying to destroy the Supreme Court. And then they underfunded Trump's Secret Service detail and almost had his head blown off when President Biden said that Trump was an existential threat to democracy who must be stopped at all costs, and then put a bullseye on Trump's head. And so that all failed, and now they're going back to their unprecedented republic-ending lawfare and election interference. And the problem, Breanna, is this. The Supreme Court has already ruled recently in two monumental cases, the Fisher case and the presidential immunity case, that Jack Smith can't do what he's doing. Jack Smith is ignoring the Supreme Court's ruling in Fisher on obstruction of justice. He's ignoring the presidential immunity case. They're also ignoring the Supreme Court's ruling on student loans. And so where Biden thinks he can just unilaterally just wipe out student loans. This is very dangerous what Biden and Kamala and their Justice Department are doing here by ignoring the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and it's obvious that that's what they're trying to do. We heard, and you and I have spoken about this, Mike, that, Joe Biden wants to just completely wipe out the Supreme Court and just kind of recreate it at this point because he's not happy with the rulings that are coming down. So he wants to get rid of term limits and things that are really critical to the Supreme Court. But again, he can't really do that because it's in the U.S. Constitution, and that would be a process that he really just can't take up at this point. But I wanted to also ask you about Jack Smith because I know we've talked about it in the past too. Jack Smith is a private citizen. He's acting as special prosecutor in all of this. Does he even have the authority to make these charges stick?
No, he does not. And Judge Eileen Cannon down in the Southern District of Florida dismissed Jack Smith's presidential records case against President Trump for presidential records he's allowed to have in the office of former president under the Presidential Records Act. Judge Cannon correctly held that Jack Smith's appointment is unconstitutional. His office is not created by Congress. His office was actually the prior office of independent counsel that Ken Starr held when they went to impeach President Clinton. Congress intentionally allowed the office of the independent counsel to lapse. And the Justice Department tried to do an end run around that by just creating this new office of special counsel with unlimited budget, virtually unlimited budget, unlimited jurisdiction, unlimited power, and very little supervision by the Attorney General or anyone else in the executive branch, a constitutional officer. And so that's why Judge Cannon correctly held that Jack Smith's appointment is unconstitutional. That is not binding. That's persuasive authority for D.C. This D.C. Obama judge, Tanya Shucken, is not going to follow Judge Cannon's ruling, and so this will have to get resolved by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it will have to. And Judge Cannon has been beyond fair in all of this. And that's the reason why the left continues to attack her. They weren't happy with how she treated the classified documents case in Florida. And they went after her and attacked her for that. If you were sitting on President Trump's legal team, what would you advise him at this point? Because he has to focus on the election, but he also has to address these new charges.
Well, this lawfare is collapsing on all these different fronts, as the Article 3 project predicted and made happen over the last 2 years with 4,000 media hits to change public opinion. Judges can follow the law as they've done in presidential immunity in the Fisher case, and Judge Cannon did down in Florida. Look, we have two more fronts on this lawfare. On September 18th, this corrupt New York judge Juan Merchan, who illegally donated to Biden and Kamala, and whose adult daughter Lauren Merchan is raising millions of dollars off of this case, requiring Judge Merchan's recusal. This judge is going to move forward with sentencing. And if passed, is indicative of what he'll do on September 18th. I think he's going to try to put Trump in prison. And if he does that, that politically, I hope he does for just 1 hour, because then Trump is going to become Nelson Mandela and win in just an utter landslide on November 5th. But that case will get to the Supreme Court very fast if this corrupt judge moves forward with sentencing and does not declare a mistrial after the Supreme Court's presidential immunity decision. And then you have Jack Smith. Jack Smith's case in D.C., he's going to try to have a mini trial before the election on presidential immunity. It's going to backfire. President Trump this case is not going to get tried before the election. Trump will move again on presidential immunity to have the indictment dismissed. Jack Smith's indictment specifically references President Trump's discussions with his vice president, which the Supreme Court already held are presumptively immune. So that case will get ground to a halt. Trump's going to win. He's going to win on November 5th. And then I hope on January 20th, his first action is firing Jack Smith and opening his criminal and civil probes on Jack Smith.
Yeah, we have to. We also have the communication between the White House and Jack Smith's office, because it's very clear that this is orchestrated together at this point, that this is a political hit job, and we need answers on that front. I wanted to get your take, though, because I did look at the new filings, and it looks like Jeff Clark's name has fallen off as the co-conspirator. Will this help Jeff Clark, who's currently right now dealing with the D.C. bar right now? Will this help him anyway with the D.C. bar?
It should, because the Supreme Court made very clear that the president's discussions with his executive branch advisors, presidential advisors, are subject to presidential immunity, and the government cannot get those communications, and they certainly can't use those communications, whether it's the Jack Smith indictment or the Soros-funded Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg indictment up in New York with corrupt Judge Juan Merchan, or the D.C. bar. These are off limits. There's a reason we have constitutional executive privilege going back 250 years to George Washington, and presidential immunity. It's so the president gets candid advice from his advisors. That advice is not used in courts or with Congress or other tribunals to chill that advice, because we want to protect the presidency. This is so much bigger than Trump. We need a strong president who gets good advice, and he doesn't have to worry about his advisors getting hauled before courts or Congress, and he doesn't have to worry about being indicted by his successor or their partisan hitchmen around the country for doing his job.
Yeah, that's really important. That's really, really important. And who would want to work in the White House if that's the kind of precedents we're going to set at this point? I don't imagine any person of quality wanting to put themselves at legal liability. And so this is really important that we get this resolved. Mike Davis, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.